How can your deepest wound become the soil for your greatest growth? That's mind blowing, isn't it? I mean, what does wound does? Wounds usually spell the end sometimes, spell something disastrous, spell something catastrophic. Well, we're going to find out about that today through the life of Joseph in the Bible. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Proverbial Mind podcast. This is your host again, Samuel, and today we are going to be talking to you about resilience, like Joseph. You might be going through a time in your life that feels tough. You might be going through some situations or journeys in your life that feels like that's the end of your life and your journey. Feels like there is no light at the end of the tunnel. Feels like there is no hope. Feels like there is no way out. It feels like that's just it. You're finished. You're done. And that mind keep telling you, you're screwed. You're done. Well, today I'm going to share with you a story. A very powerful story. One that is a signature and an embodiment of how God works in mysterious ways, wonderful ways that man can never comprehend, and how life always has its way of cycling you back to where you're supposed to be. It might not make sense through the journey, but all it requires is resilience. And resilience is what we are going to talk about. If you're here for the first time, do not hesitate to subscribe, hit the notification button, and like the video. Leave a comment down below. And if you're curious about what this podcast is all about, you can visit the channel, Proverbial Minds at Gmail, Proverbial Minds on YouTube, and check our inaugural videos that give you a comprehensive introduction of what Proverbial Minds is all about and what we are up to. So let's get into the life of Joseph. Who was Joseph? Joseph was a young man in the Bible whose father was Isaac, whose father was Israel. The Lord called him Israel too, and he's also called Jacob. Isaac was the son of Abraham, and Isaac also was the father of Jacob. Jacob, or you can call him Israel, who is also the father of Joseph. Now, Joseph was bettered to Israel, or call him Jacob, by his major wife, Ruth. Now, Ruth was the major wife that Jacob married. However, something happened, and Jacob's uncle rather, that he went to live with, gave him another woman whose name was Leah, and that was Ruth's sister. And Jacob was so pissed off. Eventually, the uncle manipulated him into taking Leah, because in their tradition, they cannot marry out the younger sibling before the older sibling. So Jacob was manipulated into marrying Leah, eventually then marrying Ruth. So Ruth then was the one who gave birth to Joseph. Joseph was the firstborn of Ruth, and then followed by his brother Benjamin. But all of this is going to make sense as we move forward. Now, Joseph was among a sibling of 12. They were in total 12. But Joseph was one of them, so he had 11 siblings. And because of the way he was bettered to his father, given that Ruth was his father's favorite wife, because that was the person who Jacob wanted to marry in the first place before Laban, the Jacob's uncle, manipulated him into marrying Leah. So as a result of that, Jacob kind of treated Joseph and Benjamin, which were the children of his real true wife, kind of special in a way than the other children. Now, the other 11 kids came from Leah, the servant of Leah, and the servant of Ruth. But we're not going to get into all that history because our focus here is Joseph. So this was already creating the friction between Joseph and his brothers. The fact that his father Jacob likes him more because she was better to him by his major wife, his original wife, whom he loved so much more than the rest of them. So that already created that friction between him and the remaining brothers. Now, the other aspect too is that Jacob was always sending Joseph to go and check up on his elder siblings. Now, when his siblings go to farm and to head the sheep and all that, Jacob will send Joseph, hey, go check up on your brothers. And so one day Joseph had a dream. In this dream, he saw the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowing down to him. Before then, he had a dream where he saw, I think was it 11 stars or 11, something like that, bowing down to him. And then he told the dreams to his brothers. His brother hated him. They were like, what do you mean? So you mean we're going to bow to you this thing? Joseph was a nobody. He was hated by his brother. He was some scrawny, tiny guy. So they hated him. They never liked him. And they were like, you mean we're going to bow to you this thing? Never. No. So that even made their hatred for him grew much more and further. Then he had another dream. The sun, the moon, and the 11 stars. Then he went to tell it to his father and his brothers. Ain't that dumb? You told them the dream the first time, they hated you, they were going to beat the crap out of you, and then you had another dream and you're going to tell them. And then he went to tell his father again that he saw the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him. His brothers grew furious again. So are you trying to tell us that we are going to bow to you? And then his father said, so are you telling me that myself, your mother, and then your siblings are going to bow to you? His father took the matter to heart, but never retaliated to him in any way. But his brothers hated him for that. And so one day Jacob told Joseph to go check up his brothers in the field. And when they saw him coming, they said, there comes the dreamer. He and his stupid dreams, the sun, the 11 stars. I can't imagine he's saying that we're going to bow to him. That's nonsense. Let's kill him. And so they made a plot to kill Joseph. But the Lord would not have them do that. One of his brothers there told them that, hey, how can we kill our brother, our own flesh and blood? Why don't we just do something else to him rather than killing him? Look there is a well there. Let's put him there instead of killing him. So that brother said that so that he can come and save Joseph later on. But they took Joseph, they captured him, threw him down in the pit, and left him there. Then they saw the Ishmaelites passing through, the Egyptians, the Egyptian traders. They saw them passing through, and they said, oh, instead of killing this guy, why don't we just sell him out to slavery? So they sold their brother to the slave traders, and they brought him out of the well and they gave him to the slave traders. And then they said, okay, how are we going to explain to his father? What did they do? They took his cloak, because his father gave him a very special kind of cloak. And then they took Joseph's cloak, they killed the goat, put the blood on it, and then took the cloak to his father, telling Jacob that Joseph was killed by a wild animal. And his father was grievous. His father cried and said, oh no, my son has been taken away from me. Whereas Joseph wasn't dead. They sold Joseph to slavery. When Joseph got to Egypt, he was adopted into the house of Potiphar. And Potiphar seems to like Joseph. The Lord's hands was on Joseph, and Joseph was very good and smart. He was faithful in the things he did. And as a result of that, Potiphar made him the head of all the slaves and the head of everyone in his house. Potiphar made him commander over everything in his household. And Potiphar never really bothered himself about anything again because Joseph was there. If you visit our last episode, we talked about contentment. Now, the power of contentment is part of what is helping Joseph here. He went from just a mere slave to being the head of all in Potiphar's house. That's a prestigious role at the time because Potiphar was also a very high-ranking official in the land of Egypt. So the Lord's hands was on Joseph, and the Lord showed him favor despite all the disasters and calamities that was happening to him. he became the head of Potiphar's wife. Now, Potiphar thought Joseph was very handsome, good looking, and so she wanted to bait him. Every time she would tell Joseph, "Come to bed with me and sleep with me," but Joseph would refuse. And so one day, when Potiphar's wife saw that there was nobody in the house, she decided to force Joseph to sleep with her. But Joseph would not do it. And he said, "My master has trusted me with everything in this house except you, his wife. I cannot do such a wicked thing." So he left his cloak. She grabbed him his cloak and wanted to force him to sleep with her. But he pulled off his cloak and left it in her hands and he ran away. And Potiphar's wife would do the most unimaginable, mean, crazy stuff. And she shouted and called all the maid and roped Joseph that, oh, Joseph tried to rape her. As a result of that, Potiphar heard this. He was very pissed off. He was very angry. And then he disposed Joseph into the prison. Joseph again find favor in the sight of God. He was very good in everything he did. He was a good leader. He was a good steward. And as a result of that, the guards made him the head of all the prisoners in the prison. So you can see a track record. Everywhere he went, he was leading. He was finding God's favor. He was leading. He was being made the head, the head. But he wasn't just made the head for no reason. First of all, the hand of God was with him. God liked him and God favored him. But all of this would later lead to a glorious destiny that God had ahead of him. And some of this we will touch on later. But just to regress a little bit, there's something that we can find consistent in the life of David, in the life of Joseph. Number one was that the Lord favored him everywhere he went, despite the disaster that he went through. But if Joseph did not have a positive outlook towards life, if he wasn't grateful and contented with all the things that he went through, perhaps he would have not even had the ability to be faithful enough to the extent that they will make him the head of Potiphar's wife, make him the head of the prisoners. And this is why I said you should go back to the previous video on the power of contentment, because this video also touched a little bit of what contentment and gratitude and faithfulness can actually do. Joseph was faithful everywhere he went. Joseph somewhat expressed gratitude everywhere he went, because gratitude is really what leads to faithfulness in a lot of times. And he was good at other things he did. He managed Potiphar's house very well, and Potiphar trusted him with everything because he was good at what he did, and he had dignity, he had integrity, and he had good character, and that helped him a lot. That would have not happened if he never had a positive outlook towards life. So this brings us to one of the major points of resilience. If you're ever really going to survive life as a resilient person, if you're ever really going to persist through the journey of life, if you're ever really going to survive the journey of resilience, you really have to have a different outlook of life. Now, not just any outlook of life, a positive outlook of life. That even though Joseph was hated by his brother, thrown in the pit, sold to slavery and everything, he still had the strength to be faithful with everything he was doing. He was still good at what he was doing. Many people will be pessimistic, angry, bitter, and do all that kind of stuff. And guess what I would have done to Joseph? He would probably end up, killed, or even being made the least of all maids, because nobody will want to trust his house to somebody that is always negative, bitter, and angry. No. So, one of the keys of resilience is gratitude, contentment, faithfulness with what you have and where you are at. All of this lead to a positive attitude towards life. And when you have positive attitude towards life, it really helps in shaping your life, your environment, your experience. This, to my belief, is part of what really helped Joseph, aside from the favor of God, his attitude towards all these things. Now, there were two people that had a dream in the prison while Joseph was in prison. The cupbearer of the king, Pharaoh at the time, and somebody who was the chef of the king. Two of them offended the king, and the king threw them into the prison. Now, they had a dream one day, and they were very, very confused, and they felt sad about the dream. And so they were lamenting about this dream that they had, and Joseph saw them and said, what is the problem with you guys? And they said, they told him about the dream they had. And he said, oh, why don't you share it with me, and I can perhaps interpret it for you. So Joseph shared this dream with them and interpreted it to them. And it turns out that the cupbearer, based on the dream he had, it was a vision from God that he was going to be returned back to his position in 3 days and will be serving, the king his cup again. Whereas the other guy who was the king head of chef, he was going to be hanged and impaled, and birds were going to eat him up. And guess what? 3 days later, the king called for the two of them out of the prison, the cupbearer and the king and the chief chef. And guess what? The chef was killed, was impaled, whereas the cupbearer returned back to his position. But then Joseph told the cupbearer that, look, when you go back to the king, make sure you tell him about me. I have been accused for something that I never did, and I've been forcefully imprisoned in this prison. Well, guess what? When the cupbearer got to the priest, back to the palace, he forgot about Joseph. Never told the king about Joseph. Never even mentioned Joseph once. And Joseph had to stay in the prison again for another 2 years. You can imagine if you were Joseph, how would you have done? Probably would have committed suicide. That's a lot of stuff to deal with, but hang on to see where that leads to. One certain day, this is after 2 years after the cupbearer had left the prison. Imagine how many years Joseph has spent in the prison. After 2 years, the cupbearer, the king Pharaoh, had a dream one time. And this dream, he had the dream whereby, there was 7 fat cows and 7 lean cows. And the 7 lean cows swallowed the 7 fat cows. And there was another dream again like that. And then the Pharaoh summoned all the magicians and the dream interpreters in the kingdom. And guess what? None of them could interpret the dream. And then the cupbearer said, oh, forgive me, my lord. There's this guy who in the prison that interpreted my dream and prophesied and told me that I was going to be let out in 3 days. And it happened. And then the king sent for Joseph. So they took Joseph out of the prison. They barbed his hair. They dressed him in nice clothes and nice robes, and they took him to the king. And when he got to the king told him, oh, they said you were going to be able to interpret my dreams. These are what and what and what I saw. And he said, well, the Lord will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. And so the Lord enabled Joseph to interpret Pharaoh's dream. And then he told Pharaoh that what the Lord showed to you, your 2 dreams you had, meant the same thing. And what that means is that the Lord has determined and is certainly going to do what he said he's going to do. That is what those dreams mean. That is why they happen. He showed to you twice in different ways, but they mean the same thing. It means the Lord is set to do what he showed you. What this means is that there will be a 7 years of abundance in Egypt. But after that 7 years will be famine. And that famine will wipe out the whole of Egypt like as if there was never any abundance. And so then Joseph told the king it would be wise for Pharaoh to appoint men and leaders who can manage the resources of the 7 years and preserve it for the next 7 years. That way, when the famine comes, there will be stock for us to survive. And Pharaoh said, well, since you are the one that interpreted my dream, it is only through the position that I'll be greater than you. But as far as I'm concerned, you are going to be the head of the whole of Egypt. And nothing will be done unless you speak. Immediately, overnight, Joseph went from a prisoner to the prime minister of the whole of Egypt. That is crazy. Do you know what Egypt was then? Egypt was like an empire. It was a powerful empire in that time of the war. I mean, there were not much people in the world that time, but Egypt was a prestigious, one of the most powerful empires that ever existed at that time. So imagine being the prime minister of Egypt. It's like being the prime minister of the United States right now. It's like being the president or vice president of the United States right now. You have access to the world, to other presidents, to other empires. They all listen to you. They all, it went from somebody who they were gonna kill, went to a prisoner, went to a slave trade person, went to from other stuff. And overnight, he became a very powerful man in the whole world at that time. That is what that is what God can do in your life. Imagine if Joseph had not gone through all of these things. Imagine if Potiphar's wife has not tried to rope him. Imagine if he has rather chose the easy route, that is, sleep with Potiphar's wife. He probably would have not been in prison. He probably would have been enjoying the lust, and be sleeping with his boss's wife, enjoying himself. But he would have cheated himself of ever becoming a prime minister. Sometimes devil knows that you are born for something great. As a result of that, it will send all sorts of fleeting pleasures and bargains to you, so as to, because of the pain and agony you're going through at the time, you will be so moved to compromise and to get easy access out of that trouble. But all he's trying to do is to cheat you of that great prime minister position that you have ahead of you. Joseph will become the prime minister of Egypt, and for 7 years he ruled Egypt and stored all the things, all the produce, rice and grains in the stock of Egypt. And as the Lord prophesied, 7 years later there was famine. People, according to the book of Genesis, you'll find this story in the book of Genesis chapter 37 to 50. All the people of the world came to Egypt to buy food from Egypt. You can imagine. Now, guess what? His brothers came to Egypt to buy grains, and Joseph saw them, but they couldn't recognize him because Joseph was great. In fact, they were so scared of Joseph. They were like, it was even being mean to them a little bit, just to kind of chaff them, not like he was going to do anything harm to them, but they were bowing down to him, calling him my Lord, not knowing that he was their brother that they tried to sacrifice. And you can imagine that dream did come to pass. It happened because when Joseph later revealed himself to his brothers, they were crying. They were afraid that he was going to kill them, because Joseph is the prime minister. Like, he commands the whole of Egypt, armies, great men, officials. They are all under his command. And yet his brothers were mere nobody. And they were there bowing down to him. And then eventually he sent for his father, his mother, and everything. And they all came to him in Egypt. And his dream, the vision the Lord showed to him, came to pass. But that vision did not come to pass without trouble. From pit to slavery, from slavery to being roped, from being roped to the prison, to being abandoned in the prison. I mean, just imagine. But if he had given up, if he has lost his values, if he had not stand firm in his faith in God, if he had not been faithful and maintained his values when Potiphar's wife tried to rope him, he would have been done. He would have just eventually be killed, because imagine being caught having been mating with your master's wife. What is going to happen to you? You're screwed at that moment. You're legitimately screwed. So he chose integrity over compromise. He didn't compromise his journey. When he became the head of the slave masters of the slaves of Potiphar's house, he could have stolen Potiphar's things. He could have tried to make way for himself. He could have robbed Potiphar and steal Potiphar's properties, and then probably would be killed. Because he was going through pain. But look at, he was trusted with all of these things. He could have stolen them, but he did not. He did not. Joseph ruled Egypt for 80 years. 80 years. Imagine that. He went through all this pain, but the glory lasted. Why? Because it was formed through fire. So, if he had not had the resilience to stay faithful, to be patient through all that trials, and to forgive his brothers for what they have done, forgive Potiphar's wife for what she has done, he would have had negative attitude towards life. He would have been bitter, angry, impatient, and just live life in a crazy way, and would have probably given up and killed himself. So, no matter whatever challenge you face in life, know that the Bible says the plan I have for you is good. The plan of good and not of evil. The plan to prosper you and to give you a bright future, to give you a hope of a future. So, as long as you love God, and the Bible says Everything works out for good for they that love the Lord. So long you have faith and you believe, so long you have good character, good values, integrity, no matter what you go through, as long as you don't give up, you keep trying, you keep your integrity, and you keep your character, you keep your values. It's a matter of time. Things will fall into place. Just keep trusting, and then boom, overnight, your life changes. Resilience is the key to achieving dreams and purpose in life. But with resilience comes values, principles, dignity, integrity, honesty, sincerity. All of these things. It's hard. It's freaking hard. But if you don't live life through those values and have positive attitude towards life, you might never fulfill that dream. And this year, guys, is the end of Resilience with Joseph. I hope you love that story. I hope you're able to gain a lot of value from it. I hope you're able to receive strength in whatever challenge you might be going through right now, to know that that is not the end of your life. That challenge does not define you. That challenge does not mean the end for you. There are better, greater things ahead of you. It's just a process of life you have to go through to become who you need to become to achieve that purpose or dream that you might have. But the way and your attitude towards those challenges would really define if you achieve that dream or you lose the opportunity. Thank you for staying this far. And again, if you're here for the first time, don't hesitate to subscribe, hit notification button, like the video, share it with your friends and family so that they can also gain value from this powerful story and powerful episode. Follow us on Instagram and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. And if you ever have any question or testimony whatsoever it may be, reach out to us at proverbialminds@gmail.com. And until the next one, peace out.